Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today I have with me Bill Murray. Bill has had a really interesting insurance career, including almost 14 years in marketing and then innovation for a large, well-known carrier whose name we're not mentioning because we're talking about his career, not about that carrier today. And before that, a couple of other interesting roles. So career episodes are always my favorite kind of episodes, and I get to do them rarely. So Bill, thank you so much for joining me today. How's it going?
Just fantastic. Thank you so much, Tony.
Awesome. And you are in Wisconsin, October 10th. I am guessing a few things without looking. I'm guessing that the Packers are doing pretty well. Okay. I'm guessing that it's like 10 degrees and you have a foot of snow in the ground.
No, it's about 65 degrees today, and it's just beautiful. I've got my window.
Beautiful. Okay, so you guys actually have a fall this year. Excellent.
Absolutely. It's fantastic.
Excellent. Hopefully it lasts until at least after Halloween.
Halloween's usually miserable here.
Exactly. Okay. So the reason that I don't get to do a lot of career episodes is because carriers are never comfortable with people coming on while they're on payroll. So I have to wait until people to be between jobs or have retired before they agree to come on a podcast episode. Sometimes we record and then we don't get permission for it to go live if they're still at the carrier. So I'd love to hear just kind of like, how did you fall into insurance? Let's start there. How did you fall into insurance?
How did I fall into it?
I'm assuming you didn't grow up going, mommy, I want to do innovation for a large insurance company.
Yeah. So, and this is funny because this is something I always talked about back in my original part of my career. And I started in 1995. I had just come back from living a short stint in California. And the economy was bad. And the only people that were hiring were insurance companies looking for people to go door to door and work out of your trunk and that sort of thing. So I took the one that looked the least bad, and spent a few years there, kind of pound the pavement. Fortunately, got moved into a management role and ended up working at the state level in training and recruiting, which was a lot of fun because I like being part of the bigger team. I like building people up and being able to see groups of people succeed. And that was a lot of fun. And so that role went on for, almost 12 years. And then there were some changes, and I found myself on the outside looking in and really never having had a real job before. It's been all 1099. Yeah.
So hold on. That one is a very interesting insurance company. Because they're very different from everybody else. And you've been gone for a long time, so I can assume that your NDA has expired.
Yeah, that was Aflac back in the day.
So Aflac is not like a traditional competitor for like the State Farms of the world, or the Aflac is very unique. Aflac is Aflac, and they do something that, if I'm not mistaken, only they do.
Well, at the time, yes, and there were competitors all over the place, but Aflac had scaled. And was hitting, it was really hockey sticking at the time. And then of course the duck advertisements started on New Year's Eve, 1999. The CEO there actually taught me a really important lesson that I've taken to this day. He said, never risk a lot for a little. And so when he looked at the duck advertising, the debut of that, he said, well, am I risking a lot for a little? Well, if people don't like it, we can turn it off and go back to our old traditional advertisements. But if people do like it, then we haven't really risked much to get something that's potentially great. Well, of course, it was great. Yeah.
So I'm 39 and a half. I've been in the States since 2002 when I came for college. Mm-hmm. In my life, it's always been the Aflac duck. What was the advertising before the duck?
Very much like other insurance companies, families hugging each other and doing events outside, and dogs and children and that sort of stuff. Nothing memorable.
So is this an insurance commercial? Is this a drugs commercial?
Exactly.
Uh, okay. Okay.
You could never tell. So the time was right to do something potentially disruptive because there's nothing to lose. So things changed very abruptly. Things hockey sticked again, and really the early 2000s especially was a fantastic time to be there, and it was great to really help a lot of people. I could tell stories for hours about individual people and when they came to us, and the opportunity that they had, and what it did for them. Now there are plenty of people that came and were unsuccessful too, and those are the ones you usually hear about, like any sales organization. But it was really great to be able to be at that ground floor with so many people.
Okay. So, but that was 1099 for the whole 13 years.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
it
very
was.
long time.
Yeah, well, and it's yeah, it changes your mindset, to the point where when I moved into a W-2 role, I was talking with the VP of marketing one day, and I said, well, employee benefits are a little bit different to me. I see the FICA match for the employer as an employee benefit, because I used to pay 15.3 instead of 7.65, and and so she liked that, as I recall.
Okay. Um, so you make the move to the more traditional type of employment with insurance.
Yeah.
Um, Large super regional or national. They might be national, but they're at least super regional.
Yeah.
So your first role there, the marketing and consumer promotions consultant. What were you doing for them?
Well, there I was trying to figure out ways to get consumers involved with our brand, which is always hard. I mean, getting consumers involved with any insurance company's brand is always an uphill battle. So what I ended up doing, because I never had actually any significant budget, is I went out basically with my hat in my hand or a guitar case out on the street, and said, "Hey, you're in the tax planning business. You're in this business or that business." Exactly. Um, it was a much smaller hat though, because I wasn't looking for a lot of money. I was just looking for enough that I could pull off whatever it is I was going to pull off and do some sort of consumer promotion. And so, I ended up talking to a lot of different companies, and they'd give me a few $1,000s here and a few $1,000s there, and it would let me keep doing what I was doing. So I was basically self-funding my job through that era. It was kind of a tough time. So I certainly have a number of companies to thank back then that they partnered up with me, because it made it a lot easier because I didn't have to ask for any money.
So then they give you the opportunity to move over to a agile innovation strategy coach mentor type thing. And when you described this one to me when we talked recently offline, I was really amazed at this role. So what a cool role. What were you doing there?
Yeah, it did evolve, and it evolved through some changes in leadership along the way that may or may not have been necessary, but it sort of ultimately turned out into something where a small group of us that had kind of accumulated in this sort of business development space broke off and went back into the company, because so we'd been kind of functioning outside the company in the business development space. And we went back into the company with a set of tools to democratize innovation within the company. And by that, I mean taking typical cube dwellers, and turning them actually into insight generators, which was really exciting, and became very exciting for me, because as I learned these techniques, it changed my life, not just professionally, but personally. When you understand how to talk to customers, and you learn things by doing them, and you do behavioral experimentation, the world becomes this place that isn't so ambiguous anymore. You have the power and the tools to learn and to conquer that ambiguity. And I found that when I coached people through these processes, taught them, worked with them through teams, it had that same transformational benefit to them. And that kind of became my gateway drug into this. It's like seeing these people transform from they just were kind of punching in, to all of a sudden they're coming in early in the morning like I do, and they're saying, hey, I don't know what's going to happen today at work, but it's going to be amazing because I've got the power to make it amazing. And so I just started telling people as I would start working with them, or leaders, as I would offer to work with their teams, I say, work doesn't have to suck. It really doesn't. It can be amazing, even at an insurance company, because we can learn.
Especially at an insurance company.
Absolutely. Well, insurance is and this is something I talk to people about. Actually, in one of my side hustles, I teach a class around this. Is that insurance is actually one of the noblest of businesses in the world, because when you apply insurance to an economy, the economy instantly explodes, because risk doesn't become the limiting factor anymore.
I've had this conversation many times. I come from Costa Rica myself. When I was growing up, so developing economy, where they call it developing. When I was growing up, there was a single insurance company in Costa Rica owned by the government, the Instituto Nacional de Seguros, the National Insurance Institute, and with no competition, they were not very good. So for example, it might be to this day, when I think it is to this day, even though now there is competition. When you had a car accident, you have to wait. You literally can't move the cars, even if you're blocking traffic. You have to wait until both the cop and the adjuster show up. And this can be a few hours while you're blocking traffic. It's just bad. And otherwise, the insurance company won't pay. And they were famous for being slow in adjusting claims. They were famous for being expensive. Quite simply, with no competition, they just had no incentive to innovate, right? No incentive to be better. Imagine the DMV doing insurance, right? like it's a nightmare, right? It's gotten better, but definitely, and my okay, so definitely, if you compare Costa Rica to the States, you definitely notice that the economy is not as developed. And for example, crime became pretty rampant when I was a kid. And in the city of San Jose, so Costa Rica is a beautiful country to do the ecotourism thing, but the majority of the population lives in the city of San Jose. That's where I grew up. The city is a monster Frankenstein of a city with no zoning, that just grew up in every direction with no planning or anything. And everywhere you go, there's bars in the windows. So the city is really ugly and really unsafe when it comes to like fire safety, because houses are designed so that the bad people can't break in, not so that the good people can safely get out, right? Luckily, it's more of an earthquake country than a fire country, but still, it's still ugly. And so when I was growing up, you could not, I don't know if it's changed now, but your homeowner's insurance, you could not buy contents, only the structure itself. So growing up, our house was broken into like 3 or 4 times, and all the electronics and stuff that were stolen, you can't insure that, right? There was no way. So yes, that holds people back. And I was never, I left before ever working. But my dad and my grandfather are entrepreneurs. And yeah, not being able to insure the risks does make it harder to grow an economy. And that's a single data point, right? But I have since traveled to 75 countries because my girlfriend's a passionate traveler. She's been to 104. And it appears to be a perfect correlation between how advanced the insurance industry is in that country and how advanced the economy is in that country. So
it is. And I've had the pleasure of being exposed to some people who've been involved in microinsurance around the world. You look at East Africa, you look at the Mekong Delta, and these are products, basically crop insurance. But what my friend said is that he could tell which villages were involved in the microinsurance program because their huts had metal roofs. And you could in that instead of farming 1 acre, they were farming 2 or 3 or 5 because they didn't have to hold back in case they lost the crop to seed the next year. They knew that even if something happened, they could get cashed out. So, hey, I'm going to farm 2 acres this year instead of 1. So it's powerful. And one of the classes I teach is about that, because it's just so amazing. It drives home the point that when people have access to risk shifting and they use it the right way, all of a sudden the economy opens up. People can take economic risks and not worry about risk of loss.
Where can people find your classes, by the way?
I gotta, they're what they are is they're continuing education classes for agents. So a lot of these I do in person. I've got some stuff on one of my websites. They wouldn't be very consumable in their existing
Okay,
form.
perfect.
But just go out there and read about some of the things that the UN's doing. Some of the big insurers in Europe are sponsoring some of these things, which is fantastic. They're putting in the infrastructure required, which sometimes includes bringing a car battery to the village so people can charge their feature phone so they can get text messages and participate in the program.
So, by feature phone, for the listeners, especially the younger ones, by feature phone, he means a non-smartphone, which is still a really common thing, like a flip phone. It's a really common thing in the developing world.
Yeah, and you can use it for texting, which is exactly what you need. You text something to a certain number and you sign up for coverage. And you have an account, a financial account, money comes out, you text, you can text to find out other things. But the cool thing about these microinsurance programs is that they're parametric. When the local weather machine finds out that there's been less than 2 inches of rain over the last month, you don't have to call a claims person in. The money is in your account. They assume your crop is destroyed, and you get to start over again. Yeah, which is fantastic. Yeah, so yeah, the cost of the unit cost per new customer is next to nothing once you have the infrastructure in there. So these are fascinating programs, and they're really really inspirational when people learn about them, and it's a cool area to be in.
Agreed. For the listeners, we have had episodes on microinsurance. We have had episodes on a bunch of parametrics. So look at some of the old episodes. We have some really good stuff. So 9 years in that kind of strategy coach, mentor, agile. I'm curious if you could share a couple of stories on kind of the results. What came out of that style of internal mentorship?
Yeah, what comes out of it is culture change. And culture change is always dependent on permission. Permission is where everything begins. Of course, I'm writing a book just like everybody else, but it's around actually how sponsors of teams working in ambiguity can be really great sponsors to them, kind of like product owners in an agile space. How do they support these teams and mentor them instead of manage them? Because managing shuts people down and mentoring opens people up. So the thing you see after 9 years is you see the change in culture. You see people who come to a meeting and instead of deciding to build a thing, actually decide to go talk to some customers first. And I didn't even have to say anything. Yeah, I was there, but all I had to say was, great idea. Let's go talk to some customers. Let's test a prototype with a handful of people and see if anybody even cares. And so that's what you see after 9 years. That's the thing that's kind of like, when you got hot toast in the morning, you put peanut butter on it, just kind of goes over nice and smooth. That's that smooth layer of culture that time brings to the company. And it's exciting and it's rewarding to see.
So is this style of innovation and mentorship internal? Is this gaining ground within other carriers that you know of, or was this an experiment at this one carrier that is not exactly taking off in the rest of the industry?
Well, the industry, you look at some of the big players, you heard back in the day about FastWorks at GE. I mean, that's not, well, GE is insurance. I mean, a big part of them is insurance, but, they had FastWorks. Other companies, State Farm and Allstate have innovation programs. They've got innovation labs. Some of them run accelerators or at least sponsor them or co-sponsor them with other companies. Across the industry, they're doing lots of things. I think the difference, from company to company comes down to results. Is it simply innovation theater, which is something coined by, I don't remember who, but it's catchy after you hear it the first time. Is it theater? Is it something that we do to feel like we're doing the right thing? And then it goes away and we go back to our old waterfall work and building stuff that nobody wants. Or does it actually have an impact? One of the impacts I see now more in some of the areas I've been working, I can get right into that program level in their scaled agile environment. I can help them make decisions between options, because we can go out, we can talk to a few dozen customers. We can do some prototypes, and then, because leaders are starved for insights. Too many leaders still think that being a leader is, I have to be the guy with all the answers or the lady with all the answers. No, you have to be the person with all the tremendous questions, because it's questions, again, that open people up and allow them, gives them permission to go out and learn the things that you, the leader, need to make those really high pressure, important decisions. You don't want to make them on your gut. You want to make them based on reading the In-Flight magazine on the way back from Cabo this weekend. You want to be able to empower teams of people that are close to the customer. Heck, I mean, is the average executive at an insurance company anywhere near their customer on a daily basis? I would say no, just from an economic standpoint, for Pete's sakes. They probably don't live in the same neighborhood, drive the same car, or go to the same grocery store. So get people that are close to the customer, let them bring back insights, real insights, the why of the what, not, hey, people like this. That's not insight. Insight is something that this is happening because, and everything after the because is that thing now that's actionable, that we can go out and test. Is this really what's going on? And is the say and the do matching up? Because say do is the end of really any startup, any project, anything else. Oh, customers said they want this, so let's go build it. Well, a few $1 million later, nobody bought it. Why not? They said they wanted it. They should want it. But we don't take into account behavioral economics. We just think economics. We paste people onto logical canvases and assume they're going to do what they should do. Nobody does. You don't. I don't. Not because we're bad people or liars or anything else. We're just people. And we act in a certain way, and we act for reasons that are our own. But if we can't get to those, then we're going to continue to build bad products that people don't want. And we're going to continue to look bad as an industry. Sorry,
There's a great, no, that was fantastic. There's a great story that I heard at a conference last year. And I've only heard it once, so I'm probably butchering it, but the basic idea is good. So basically, they were working with the Chicago Stock Exchange, right? The Chicago Stock Exchange is options, and they apparently at this time, I'm guessing post-COVID, it's no longer this way, but at this time, orders were communicated through a lot of yelling and hand signals. Sure. And right, exactly, and they just had their own language, kind of thing, and errors were common, right? Where you said one thing, the broker understood a different thing, and the order got executed wrong, and then a big fight ensued. So anyway, so whoever, I can't remember the company, it might have been like Beasley long ago, kind of thing. But anyway, one of the specialty carriers saw this problem at the stock market and asked the brokers, hey, would it be useful to have insurance that protects you from this miscommunication? And like 95% of the brokers said yes, it would be super useful. Yeah. So anyway, they built the product, they started selling it, and they didn't sell a single policy for like a year and a half. And they couldn't figure out what wasn't working. Finally, they pulled it off, like they pulled it off the shelf, and they moved on. And basically, like the conclusion they came to is quite simply, yeah, it would be useful. But stockbrokers are by definition risk takers. They're not insurance buyers, right? Like, yes, it'd be useful to have that, but it's not painful enough, expensive enough. I don't care enough about the problem to go out of my way to buy an insurance product about it. I'm used to taking risk every day. It's what I do, right?
Absolutely.
So great story.
We had the same thing happen on our accelerator. We had a team that was hearing everything they needed to hear that the agents didn't want this certain thing. But the executives came in and said, well, we need to build it anyway. We got to have it done by summer. So they built the doggone thing and they sold 6 policies. And 5 of them were to agents for their own office. So, again, the process works every time you try. And, for me, it is so exciting to help people get to this and to bring these amazing insights to their leaders so that we can actually do do the right thing instead of either doing the wrong thing or overbuilding the right thing. And using, and for me, using that agile sort of framework, even though we're not necessarily early on in a technical space, using that framework, helping people to move quickly and think really small is fantastic. And overall, the whole thing is that people stop starting and start finishing. That's the other thing. When you've got the data that you need, you can actually make the decision and either say no or yes. And that's what we have to have more of. We have to have more no's and yeses and not, well, give it 3 to 6 more months.
Okay, so we have like 3 to 4 minutes left. So I have time for one more question. Let me ask this one. What advice do you have for young insurance professionals, especially the ones that are in or near the innovation side of carriers?
Be absolutely relentless in following your customer. Don't assume anything, and understand more deeply than the customer themselves why it is that they do what they do. CPG companies do this really well. They go into their houses with their people. I mean, there's great stories around products like Febreze and how, 30 years ago, toilet brushes just had one brush at the end. But if you buy one now, it's got a brush on the bottom and it's got a brush on the top too. Something like that came from somebody going into somebody's house and watching that they had taken a dish brush and they duct taped it onto the top of their toilet brush, and so they could scrub both at the same time. That's your customer will design the product for you if you let them. Get out of the way
Pay
and
attention.
for Pete's sakes. Don't do work you don't have to do. Designing with customers is beautiful and it's wonderful and it's the right thing to do for people. Because why would you want to design a product that people don't want?
I love it. That's an absolute mic drop quote there. Bill, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really, really fun. I look forward to see what you do in your next adventure. Post your long time at a carrier. Definitely looking forward to have you back on the podcast once you've chosen your next adventure. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Tony. This was fun.